Hello and welcome to the Car Care channel, and welcome to the 2024 Lexus LC500. In my opinion, this is one of the best Lexus models ever made, past, current, and future, and especially in 2024. In today's video, we're gonna do a proper technical review. We'll take a look under the hood, underneath the car, inside it, outside it. We're gonna talk about some of the important updates that happened in 2024. Talk about some things we like, some things we do not like, though there are very few of those lately, especially about this car, right after this. Let's start our technical review under the hood. Well, and there's so much to cover here, folks, but let's start with the engine briefly, and then we'll talk about a few interesting things with the LC500. This engine needs no introduction. It is the 2UR GSE, 5-liter V8, naturally aspirated. The best way to describe this engine, it sounds like thunder. Let's take a listen. That is a sweet sounding engine. Possibly one of the best V8s to come out of Toyota performance wise. Let's start with some mechanical construction here, because there's something very interesting here. See, Toyota's dropping the V8s, and they actually dropped almost all their V8s except this one. That's the interesting part about this. So this is an all aluminum engine. Does not have plastic valve covers, aluminum valve covers. It does have two-piece cylinder heads, you know, the cam cradle and then the cylinder head itself. It does have an aluminum block with spiny or spinny liners. Pretty interesting setup. That's basically every single Toyota engine, by the way, nothing bespoke or special. This does have D4S, so you have direct and port injection at the same time. This does have two high-pressure fuel pumps, one on the driver's side, one on the passenger side. The variable valve timing system on this engine is pretty interesting. It was cutting edge at the time, and now you're seeing it basically in every single car from Toyota and Lexus. The intake side is electronic, so it has a motor that spins the inner gear of the variable valve timing gear that advances and retards the timing. Depends. If it speeds faster, it's advancing. If it speeds slower, it's retarding. If speed is the same speed, space timing. Very interesting. But this design is extremely ancient. I mean, at the time when this came out, this was groundbreaking. And this did not come out in 2018. More like 2007. That's the technology of this engine. But to see it today, still in a production car, and the way things were done, and with that, not only comes the old schoolness of this engine, the build quality of this engine, the lack of use of plastic. There's not a lot of plastic here, and that is something we don't see anymore. And the use of the super old school injector driver. So as soon as you look at the top of the engine, you'll see the two big computers that are sitting here. These are not the engine computers. These are actually the injector drivers for the direct injectors. It simply doesn't exist in newer cars anymore, because they combine both of these in something this small. This is massive because it's old school. This engine has a lot of little stuff that they really went over the top with. So I've said this in other videos and folks have gotten upset, but please bear with me. The initial design of this engine was a truck engine that got modified to be this. So the oiling system is very basic in its initial form of this engine. They had the oil pump at the nose of the crank, part of the big front cover in the front, nothing really over the top about it. However, because this is a performance car, and because this particular iteration of this engine was going to go in high performance cars, they added a belt-driven scavenger oil pump that will help the initial first oil pump on high G quartering, so the engine would not run down on oil. That is pretty cool. That's kind of going over the top. Now, the cooling system in this engine is very basic. You have a mechanical water pump. Coolant goes around the engine, goes to the heater core. No fancy valves, folks. This comes from a completely different era of engine design, so everything is extremely basic. You look at it today, it just looks like, wow, this is very uncomplicated. As complicated as it looks, it is not complicated by today's standard, because It's very basic. But the cool thing about the LC500, let's talk about a few things that are just different than other models that have the same engine. First thing is, this has two mass airflows, not just one. It has two air filters, not just one. The intake manifold is not plastic. Most of the UR iteration engines is plastic. This one is not. It's actually aluminum, which is kind of an interesting choice because that's heavier. But that's how they deemed it. You will not find much plastic here for the cooling stuff because this is an LC500. The other thing is, there's a distinct thing that I love about this. If you look at this AC line right here, you notice that it is black in color and it's wrapped. There is absolutely no reason to make this black other than aesthetics. They wanted this not to stick out because everything else is black, so they actually painted it black because if you look down, the line is silver. They purposefully painted it black just to make it blend in nicer. That's the level of kind of over the top with this engine. And then if you look all the way at the back, there's this kind of accordion hose that takes the intake sound into the cabin of this car so you can really hear it. As quiet as this cabin is, that is there to transfer some of that sound inside the car. That is pretty cool. And this car has kind of brake-by-wire brakes. Let me explain. Actually, I don't see a reason why it needs it, but it does. So this doesn't have a vacuum booster. This has actually a hydraulic booster. And it's this giant unit that is extremely complicated that sits right here. Extremely complicated, extremely old school. But it is there. And every time you open the door, it makes that very familiar buzzing. The only difference is the buzzing is so light you can't even hear it because this car is very well insulated, and that's the cool thing. Other stuff that I love. I mean, this is the definition of a very complicated car. And we see this in a lot of modern Lexus models. Oh, we have two hood latches because we need two hood latches to make things better. Well, this is a very fast car. It only has one hood latch. Nothing special about it. But what is special about this car, and similarly the LS500, because of this long hood and to get it to pass safety regulations, they actually put a little, tiny little, I don't want to call it an airbag, but it's actually a charge similar to an airbag. Two in the front, one on each hinge in the back. The reason for this, if you hit a pedestrian, it's going to lift up so the pedestrian wouldn't get thrown out, and it kind of holds them in place. Destroys the hood in the process, but safety is very important, and that's why they did this, to keep it kind of safety compliance, because this is a very old design. And lastly, I want you to look at one thing. Look at this strut tower, the shape of it. It's just a beautiful thing. And the best part is, most car manufacturers will not really pay too much attention to the paint under the hood, but this paint puts a lot of new cars to shame on the body outside, let alone here under the hood. This just looks beautiful. Everything you touch and see here, it's just over the top. You will not see another Lexus model like this. It's a beautiful thing to look at. I mean, just look at it. It's a great engine, reliable, well made, and just there was no compromise here. And I love it. I love to look at this. Let's take a look underneath the LC500, and I want to say one thing. You know, usually we look underneath cars, we talk about the stuff. Here, we're going to look at the work of art. I mean, every time I look underneath an LC500, it is like, just, if you work on cars, or you're a mechanic, or you're a DIYer, you will appreciate some of this stuff. I mean, just look at this front. See, most car manufacturers, they're getting away from metal covers because they're heavier. They're really unnecessary. I mean, a car like this, you're not going to go off-roading. A cover like this would have been perfectly fine, but no. Not only is it a metal cover, it is a very heavy-duty metal cover because it's an LC500 and it's a Lexus. And then you look at the front suspension, for example, here. I mean, this is close to the LS500 suspension, but not quite. And let me share with you a few things here. First of all, if you go look at, like, for example, LS460, this bushing is completely different. It's actually a common wear area. This one is completely different than it. because they wanted it to be kind of bespoke to this car. And I'm looking at every single bushing here. Everything is oversized and just not the standard. We're not going to just take parts from other cars and let's put them on the LC500 to make it work. No, everything you see here is bespoke to this car. And the best part is, there is some things that are really good, some things that are, could have done better. Let's talk about them. For example, almost everything is aluminum here. I mean, the lower control arms, they're all aluminum. Knuckles aluminum. The upper arms, they're also aluminum. And the only thing I wish they wouldn't do here, although there hasn't been really cases of it, this ball joint is actually part of the knuckle. Or it's actually pressed into it, not something you want to replace alone. I wish they didn't do that. I wish this was flipped, and it's part of the control arm at least. But they didn't do that. That's the only thing I wish they would change. Now let's turn around and look at these massive brakes. I mean, the brakes here are massive, for lack of a better word, and you really feel them. Folks, the wheel you're looking at is a 21-inch wheel. And look, there's hardly a small gap here between the rotor and the wheel. This is a massive rotor and a massive 6-piston caliper. It is just no compromise. Then we'll move away from that into this other shield, which is, again, they don't make cars like this anymore, even though it's a 24, but we'll talk about that a little bit toward the end of the video. You have these braces, which are also very, you don't see this in other cars. Then we look at the transmission. Now, we'll talk a little bit about the transmission a little bit later in the video, but this is a 10-speed transmission. Plastic or resin pan, basically fancy for plastic. But I like the little details. The 10mm bolts here, they match the color. Usually manufacturers don't do that, but here they match the colors. Not these two, but these bolts. I like that little detail. Now these two plugs are, one of them is a drain plug, one of them is a standpipe. That's how you check the transmission fluid level. Now this does have an electronic shifter. If you come look at the side here, you notice this is the shift, this is what actually makes the shifts happen, because this is the motor that simulates what this cable does and just moves the shifter. But this is actually the manual release should you get stuck. They even thought of this in a car like that. If the battery dies, how are you going to get out of park? They thought of it because I feel like this transmission was designed to not be electronic shifter. It could actually be cable shifter. So we're swapping this in another car. Kind of already got this ready for us. And then the mount right here is just you look at it from here, it looks just like a standard mount. But look at the back. Look how huge this thing is. I mean, any other Lexus revamp LS430, one of the ones that I really talk about a lot on this channel, it's half the size. That's how just over the top things are here. The exhaust, to me, I mean, some people will just look at this and be like, oh, it's just a chunk of metal. To me, this is a piece I would take and put in my living room just to look at it, how beautiful it is. It's just, all the welds are perfect. That's what they went over the top with on this car. All the shields, nothing is cheap and flimsy here. And that's what the beautiful thing about this car is. Now there is this X brace here. This is for the convertible part to give the car kind of more rigidity, and that's something you'll see in a lot of convertibles. But there's the Lexus stuff, the modern Lexus stuff, and I don't know why that is the case. Lexus loves to use in their pastime, love to use this little shield around the O2 sensor. We really dislike it because you have to have a really thin tool to get in here, and this one being so close, most of these thin tools are tall, so you can't reach it. But then we go look at the other side, well, it doesn't have it. So why couldn't we just have the other one also not have it? I don't know, but that's what they did. This is no good. It should be like that. Moving on from that, this exhaust is just beautiful. I love the quality of everything. We have this little opening, which is for the bolt and the fuel line for the fuel tank. The fuel line is right there. And the other side, we also have a similar door for the other fuel line. Right there. Very nice that they will put a door, although this is sometimes they do things in cars that just don't make sense in the actual service world. So we put this little door to take the fuel line off, but as soon as you take it, it's going to soak this in fuel, so nobody's angry. But this is a little stuff that they do to just say that we thought of you. Then we come to the rear end here. I mean, just look at this entire view here. Looks very complicated, yes, but let's kind of dive into it. I don't recall a lot of new cars that have a rear end that is just solid. Just even the aluminum here just have a different feel to it. It comes from an era. It feels like we're looking under an old Lexus, not a new Lexus. Not because it's old technology, but just the build quality. Folks, this is, I think, why, aside from the performance of the LC500 and everything, the quality. This is the cool thing about this car is it is made so well. It's unbelievable. This is like the celebration of Lexus's quality and what they really stand for. And I hope they still do with their other cars. Of course, this exhaust has two cutoff valves. They're not both on at the same time, but they open and close depending on the driving condition. You can't control them directly. But big muffler here, then actually two actual tips. If you come look here on the side, you can see two pipes coming out. And if I recall correctly, don't quote me 100% on this, Toyota and Lexus are the only manufacturers that paint the tips black, even though you can't see them from the outside. But they actually put a coating on these. Even their mufflers, the face of the muffler, they'll paint it black when it's just sitting underneath the car. I just can't. It's just like music, just a piece of art. This is the Mona Lisa standing in front of me, at least to me. I'm just into this stuff. Look at the rear suspension. We do have all aluminum arms. There's not a single arm that is not aluminum, except this one. Aluminum knuckle as well. Now, we do not have the typical electronic parking brake because this is a massive caliper, and they do not have calipers like that with electronic parking brake. But this car actually does have electronic parking brake, and here's how that works. Something that they've done in other previous models, but the LC500 still gets it. So you do have a regular cable. If you come here, you'll see it. This does have parking shoes inside the rotor hat, but these two actually go to an actuator that sits on top of the diff. That actuator pulls on these cables to engage it. That's how it is electronic. Lexus used this style for a while on some of their cars, and now they're all switching. But this one still has this old school style. I think it's too complicated, but that's, I guess, the LCs, they don't want to update it. But then we turn around, you know, when we do car reviews, if you watch my second channel, I review cars, and we always talk about this. Manufacturers leave this area wide open. So look here, not here. This is completely closed. You can't, this elaborate cover is there just to cover that area. Same thing here. And it's, looking underneath here, I feel like I am underneath an LS400, the original one. That was one of the cars that just, they didn't just build it well and made things right, they over-made stuff. I mean, there's a lot of things here they could have got rid of. Nobody would have noticed. Maybe made the car lighter or whatnot, maybe a little cheaper. But no, their point with this car was not the performance, was not the looks, was the build quality. And this is where it shows. It shows just incredible, the level of just even the tiniest little thing they cared for. And the last thing I want to show you, sorry, I'm obsessing on this, but it's like Christmas to me. So the rear subframe is steel. It's not aluminum. The front one is aluminum, the subframe itself. But here we have this little secondary brace that is aluminum, and then these two little pieces connect to it to connect the body to the subframe, but through this little brace that is aluminum. And then you follow this brace across the exhaust on this side. You see it has another brace here, and then another one over here, and it's just beautiful. I have to say that it just looks, I want to take a picture of it, just keep looking at it, it's so beautiful. Oh, sorry, I got distracted. Let's take a look at the outside and the inside, and call me biased, call me whatever you'd like. This is one of the most beautiful cars I've ever stood next to. And again, not just for the looks, but for the way things are done. This is like a testimony of what Lexus wanted to do one day they did it. Maybe in today's time, they have to change with times and whatnot, but this is definitely it. I mean, just look at this front. Everybody dislikes the spindle grille. They're slowly moving away from it, but here it just feels like this is what they originally designed the spindle grille on, because it's not just flat, a giant slab. It has this big curve into it, and then it comes down, and this kind of darkened chrome. It just looks epic. I love how this looks like. And then the headlights, it's a very complicated shape, because you have this piece that kind of cuts out here, and you have this panel, and then you have the L kind of integrated into this. It just takes you a moment of looking at it to really appreciate its beauty and design. What I appreciate the most is just the execution. You know, you look at the gaps here. You know, humans are imperfect, but this is as close as we're going to be able to get something to perfect as possible. I just have to say it. And the best part is, the design looks complicated in certain areas, but if you look at the hood lines, there's actually just two hood lines. This one, which follows the grille, and then this one, which is a lot lighter, kind of emphasizes it just to gives it this interesting curve here. The rest of the hood, I mean, it could be from an ES350 that we just have to the side here. That's how less is more with car design. And that's exactly what this is. Super long hood, and this is the idea of this car. It's the luxury coupe, and that hood emphasizes that. Then we come to the side. Now, they had to unfortunately put this for US compliance. I wish they didn't, because it just looks off, but it's there. But then you look at the fender. The fender has like a flat spot, or it almost turns completely flat here. And then it comes down, it has this lip. It follows nothing that the automotive industry is doing right now. This is kind of in a class of its own. But here's the interesting twist with this design. If you follow this line, it kind of comes up and it turns and it becomes the pillar and disappears into the pillar. It's just such a beautiful thing. It's just such like an interesting shape that this car have. And then this side, look at this door. There is not 17 lines and all kinds of design. Actually, there's only but one line, and that's it. Because the beauty is in the whole thing when you look at it, and it is seriously beautiful. So the bottom part comes up and it extends into this entire piece. But there's something very cool. If you look at the side, like if you stand right here and look, there's actually a dip into the body, and then it comes back up. That dip is actually an optical illusion, because this is flat, the back is out, but what is dipped in is this line. This line dips in here, and then it comes back out. It's not actually the body that is in and out, it's just that panel, which is very interesting. Now, the door handles on this car, they're one of these. I'm not usually, don't like these type of door handles, but here's the cool thing. This is a mechanical door. So if the battery is dead and this handle is down, you can just push it here and open the door. And this, listen to it. This is an actual mechanical handle. This is not some electronic this and that. And I love that. I mean, why couldn't we do that in the newer models that now has the E-latch and whatnot? But it goes so much more than that. If you look here, they put a little Lexus logo on the door handle itself. And then we open the door, and this is where things get extremely interesting. So you have a little light here that tells you, because this doesn't have actual toggles inside, there's a little light here that tells you if this door is locked or not. For example, if I close this door and I lock it, this light turns green, telling you that the door is locked. After some time, it'll just shut off. But for now, we don't want it locked. We want to look at the door, not the door panel, the door itself. This is what I love about this. You know, when you get into like exquisite cars from a manufacturer, everything is one-off. Everything is just completely different. And of course, now they're making a completely different car. But watch this, $117,000 car, completely bespoke and just top of the line. Watch this. It has the same switch and technology from an 80s family station wagon. That's the courtesy switch. We just did a video on the new Supra, which is made by BMW, and the complication of having that little switch inside of here and all that mess. And I actually mentioned the LC500 in that video. That's all it does. It's literally a single wire switch. That's all it does. Why do we need to put it there? We don't. And looking at this door, so the outer skin of the door is just the metal of the body, but this inner skin is actually a carbon composite for weight saving. It is extremely cool. Just look at this shape of it. And the interesting thing is, they needed to bond this to the door, and they wanted to use the special screws that usually you don't see bolts like that or screws like that in Toyota or Lexus. Because of that, they're bespoke to the LC500, and they have Lexus written not one time, 3 times on the bolt. If this bolt was anything, standard bolt, whatever, out of a bin, nobody would notice. But this is where they care about. And not only here, even underneath the door, you can't even see it. That's what they wanted to do with this car, and oh, they did it. We'll get back to the interior a little bit because that's a whole different thing. Then we wrap around the back. Of course, this is a convertible. There's a hard top as well. We're going to open the convertible top halfway and kind of look at it. But there's another thing with this car, the tail lights. See, most cars, okay, we have LED tail lights, whatnot. No, they couldn't leave that alone. This light has a mirror, and like a series of mirrors that reflect the light and gives it this very interesting shape at night. It just looks beautiful. And you look at it, you can't even see like the outline of the bulb. It just looks like a screen almost. And that's the illusion of it. So it has a bunch of mirrors that reflect the light in a certain way. So it would be like an even, perfectly even light. This is so beautiful. I really love it. Turn signals are here, and they tried, if you notice, they tried to copy the same effect here. It's not as much as the taillight itself, but you notice this also, you do not see a direct strip, just looks like a strip of white. I really like that. Now the back of it, even though these exhaust tips, they're not actual tips, as we looked at, they're not actual tips, it just flows and it just looks beautiful. And I like how they put Lexus and they put LC500 right in the middle. It's almost telling you this does not need any more introduction. No, you do not need to put 5.0 and convertible and all the badging. You don't need to. It's just, you do not need to interrupt this body line. It looks just beautiful. Now this car, actually being convertible, does have a trunk. Let me open this trunk and we'll look at it. It is not the biggest trunk in the world, not even on this side of Lexus, but has a trunk. But the best thing about this trunk is this is a 2024 car, and I've been working with Toyota and Lexus for a long time now, and I've seen how their older cars transition to their newer cars. I'll tell you one thing, this car comes from a completely different era, and there's one telltale sign for me. These clips. Look at these clips. You know, when I was working on my LS430, they love to use these clips in that era. And this car came in 2018. They were no longer using these clips anymore, but they used them here. There's a good reason for that. It's almost like a hidden Easter egg. We use these clips to remind you of the days we were in the cars we built when we used these clips. Now you have a battery here. It's a pretty massive battery. Normally for Lexus, we don't have batteries this big. There's a fuse block here. I like that the access is super simple. You just pull this panel and that's about it. But of course, you buy a car like that, you're not looking for storage space, but everything is that same composite material on the trunk. I love it. It just looks so nice. Folks, this car is, the build quality of things is just over the top. Let's look at this interior. I mean, it needs no introduction. This is a bespoke edition, bespoke built. Just look at this interior. So in 2024, according to Lexus, first time you can actually custom order the colors and the materials and whatnot in this car. This is a Lexus first. Did you know that Lexus and Toyota actually do not take custom orders? That's one of the ways of the Toyota manufacturing system. They will figure out what options people want, and they will supply these. And when you custom order one, it's just a matter of finding which sequence of build that's going to have those specifications, and they send it to you. But this is bespoke. You can actually customize things here. It just I'll let you look for a second before we talk about anything, because it is unbelievable. The little stuff. The big stuff look great, but the little stuff. Let's talk about such little stuff. First, we always talk about cars, this is possibly one of the nicest leathers I've ever seen in my life, but usually manufacturers, they'll cover the seat in leather, and then in the back of the seat, they just put plastic, save a few bucks. Not here, because even this handle has leather. The entire seat is exactly the same leather. But wait, not just the seat, this little strap as well. Not just that, even this side of the seat where nobody will see, down here, this is all leather all the way to the bottom. Is that unnecessary? You can say that, but you know what? I feel like they didn't build this car to just have the average buyer be impressed. They really wanted to impress themselves. Now the back seat in this car is, come on, just look at the driver's seat. That's my driving position right there. Thereof the lack of. Let's put it this way. And you could put your bag here or whatnot. But the interesting thing is, everything here is leather, down to the sides, down to the very bottom of it. I put my hand down here where you can't even see it. It's all leather. And that's the point. That's what they wanted. They didn't want to compromise nothing. Of course, the center console, this is all leather all the way to the bottom. This is also not the same kind of leather as the seats, but it is coated. And that's the whole idea. They don't want to just put plastic. Now here's the big news of 2024 for the beautiful LC500. They made a change, and I feel like they were extremely nervous about this change. Let's check that change out, because it's actually a big deal. So here's what happened with the interior. First, all LC500s have 360 camera. You just button right here, you press it, and you have the view, and it's exactly the same as other Lexuses. Nothing more, nothing less. But the biggest change is the screen, the infotainment system. The screen used to be kind of built into the dash, and you had the trackpad here. It was not touch screen. It was a very old system that just, yeah. This, however, has the latest infotainment system from Lexus. But the thing is, I feel like they could have done this better, and I feel like they faced a dilemma. Because if you put the screen exactly where it was, being a touch screen, it would be way too far, because it used to be at the same level of this. They had to move it forward. But the only thing I wish they would have done is integrate it a little better. I feel like the border of the screen is black, and it completely does not match the rest of the interior. I don't fault them for this. I think they did a good update, the intent, but the execution, it's an LC500. We could have done better. That doesn't feel like a very LC500 part. However, here, to replace the giant trackpad that used to be here, I like what they've done here. They give you this very nice aluminum volume button that is very large, and it actually turns on the radio on and off. I love this. It just feels so nice. And then they moved the seat controls. They're no longer physical. They're actually in the screen. You press this button and they pop up there, and you still have your auto and everything. I feel like if we put physical button here, we could have just put the controls here, but That's just me. You have tune and skip, and I like that they kept these physical and they're right here. They're very available. But the infotainment system itself, it's the latest infotainment system from Toyota and Lexus, works very good, sometimes glitchy, but for the most part, for such a conservative company, we like it. But now, with that, they did not do much else. Because how can you improve on such near perfection? You just can't. It's like they didn't change anything, nothing. I mean, look at the HVAC controls. They're physical button. They're this beautiful aluminum trim. It's just, I can just stare at it. I don't even need to have the car on. I just stare at it. It looks beautiful. And then look at the steering wheel. This is a very old school steering wheel from Lexus. You still have that gauge that moves from the LFA, which is perfect in this car. We don't need a giant screen there that shows you this and that. No, they didn't change it because you don't need it. You still have the same beautiful magnesium paddle shifters. It's just everything else remained exactly the same. And that's just the beauty of it. The grab handles for the passenger, you do have two of them. You know, they hold on for dear life handles. You have two of them for the passenger because you will need to hold them because this thing is very, very fast, of course, how it is, but what a beautiful interior. I cannot, if you ever have a chance to sit in the LC500 or see it in person, you will understand what we are on about. Well, the last thing I'll show you is this carpet. It probably doesn't show in video, but the last time I've seen a carpet like that is when we tore down my LS430 to completely clean the interior, 600,000 mile one, and that's how the carpet was. Not new cars. No new car will have a carpet this thick, this lush, because it's very heavy. And the LC500 still does in 2024. And I think it's one of the last cars that will have a carpet like this because everything here is, even the pillars, everything is covered. You will not see a lot of plastic here. And it's done so well. I'll just leave it at that. This is just over the top from Lexus. We have the roof on the LC500 halfway open, so we can look at some of the details of it. But did you know that this hydraulic roof here, convertible top, is one of the most just tested and kind of they really obsessed over this one. So here are some specs for this one. It opens in 15 seconds. It closes in right around 16 seconds. Depends on wind factors and whatnot. You can actually open and close it. Speeds up to 31 miles an hour. It's pretty impressive. And here is the kind of over-the-top details. They do use hydraulics here, but it's also a combination of hydraulics, motors, and the materials they used here. There is all kinds of spaceship-like materials here to make sure that this roof is reliable, not anything else, but reliable. I mean, look at the intricate details of how this works. You see this panel? This actually comes out and closes a little gap at the edge when everything is said and done, and this is about to come down when the roof is down. And then when it's not in use, it actually folds in and stays out of the way because that's where the roof will actually cover. And then you look at some of the hydraulic mechanism and just everything looks massive. There is nothing small or flimsy. When you look at the little details of the hinges, some of these hinges are actually magnesium to make them lightweight and strong, which is pretty just over the top. And here's the most interesting part. So do you think this is a storage area or something of that nature? I mean, it looks lined. It looks like you could use for storage. That's actually not the case. The only thing that lives here is the convertible top. But even this area, they lined it with this very nice material. It's actually insulation to keep things kind of insulated. They went over the top with this. So the kind of the tech material they're talking about this, they test each roof 18,000 times to make sure that it is durable and reliable and we don't have any issues. And that's how, I mean, convertible tops, when they break down, they are the most expensive thing in the planet to fix because they're extremely complicated. They have a lot of hydraulic lines, they have all kinds of stuff. And you see a bunch of those tiny lines. We're not talking about giant lines, we're talking about tiny little hydraulic lines. And you can see here's a hydraulic cylinder, kind of looks like a hood strut, where you have two lines to it. We're not talking about big hydraulic lines. These tiny little lines, they control everything here. And here's the interesting fact about the LC500. If you want to replace the strut, this is actually where your strut is in the back. You have to open the roof partially to get to it. It is right here. And then notice this big aluminum brace here that sits this kind of like a strut bar or cross brace or however you want to call it. It actually sits here. The convertible versus the non-convertible on the LC500 is a tough conversation, but I like the hard top and rock and convertible, but I've driven, this is the second convertible we've gotten and we've reviewed. It's just, I love this, what's going on here so much that this is very tough. It's very tough. Which one is better? They're both great in their own way. Look at this. Look at the level of just insanity that they went for here in this little part that nobody will ever think about. Well, let's talk about some things we do not like about this car. The truth have to be said, they're very minor stuff. This is just one of the most near perfect cars we will ever review, I think. Couple things. So in 2024, as we talked about, they updated the infotainment system, and we're going to talk about pros and cons here because some they will love this, some they might not like this. This car needed a technology update for the infotainment because it had just an ancient system that not only it was old school, it just didn't work well. There's no other way to say it, but the rest of the car kind of masked that and you didn't notice. But this new system, while the system works great, it does have some glitches, but the integration of that screen takes a little bit from the design of this car. Not the end of the world, looks great and everything, but they could have done something. Maybe sacrificed that the screen is far away, left it in the same spot, and made a touch screen, something. But this was, I think, they came up with the best that they could. Nice thing is, we have new technology. Not so nice thing is, it just feels like the screen is intruding of that beautiful, beautiful interior. The second thing is, which has been kind of a thing with the LC, and they did multiple updates to it, and it's gotten a lot better, but it's still there, and we are really nitpicking this because of the statue of this car. The transmission. I love the 10-speed transmission. I think it's very well companion of this beautiful 5.0. But this transmission does not follow the dual personality of this car very, very well. It sometimes, and this is what I don't understand about it, it's an adaptive transmission. It's sometimes when you're driving it slow, it'll feel like it's shifting rapidly and it's kind of like hunting a little bit. And then sometimes when you drive it aggressively or kind of spiritedly, it'll not shift as you wanted it or expect it to do. Sometimes it's fine. It does have kind of a mind of its own sometimes. That is a very minor nitpick because this car is just such a beautiful car and the engine behaves just wonderfully. When you want it to be quiet and smooth and just kind of disappear in the background, it will. And when you want it to be extremely loud and just remind you it's there, it will do that on just a touch of a button and a press of a pedal. But the transmission doesn't always follow that very well. I feel like in 2024 things have gotten a lot better, but I think this is as good as they're going to get because of the limitations of the technology of this transmission, because they have to still keep it reliable. So they're not going to push this transmission beyond this limit just to make it completely follow. And I think that was the point of compromise for them. The LC500. There's one thing that I want to say. Ever since I laid my eyes on one and driven one and just kind of examined one since it came out in 2018, the current slogan or motto for Lexus is experience amazing. This doesn't apply to this car because amazing is not good enough for this. The proper way to identify this car is the relentless pursuit of perfection. This is more suiting in this car because I feel like this car comes from that era of that relentless pursuit of perfection. This car, as we see it right here, is $117,000. A lot of folks in the world will not be able to afford a car like this. And even if they can, they will find 117 ways to invest that money better than buy a car like this. But this car is a statement. It is not really a car to purchase only. It is a statement that there is a faction inside of Lexus that still cares about stuff like this, still values the importance of build quality. Not build quality as in it will win races and win concours and whatnot, although it would, but just the attention to detail to even the littlest things that you will never see. That's what this car is about. This to me is the greatest car to come out of Lexus after the LFA, after the original LS 400 that started Lexus. This is a very important car for Lexus because the level of just attention to detail with this car, beyond its performance and beyond, everything about it and all that, it's impressive. It is very much Lexus. I mean, we looked at some of the things in this video. The best part about this car is they did not make a bespoke thing that doesn't exist in any other car. The gauges, they're available in other cars. The wiper blades, they are the same as your Camry. There's no other way to say it. And the door switch that we looked at, and there's a lot of things in this car that they share with other models. It doesn't make this car any lesser, but that's how well they make little things that they will put it in their top of the line car, including this engine. This engine is available in other models as well. But this car, to me, is as near as perfect of a car you're going to get because of that dual personality that it has. Let's address that for a second. This car is a high performance car. It's pretty fast. It's a very powerful engine, very responsive transmission, laggy when you drive it slow, but that's not the point. You can drive it on a track and it's very fun and it's very fast and it handles very well. A little bit on the heavy side, I must say, but it does things very well and puts a giant smile on your face. But this same car that you just took on the track with the kind of push of a few buttons, it becomes a very comfortable, very refined and quiet cruiser. There's not many cars you can say that about, because usually high performance cars are jarring, not comfortable, or loud and just obnoxious to drive on a day-to-day basis. It's not a nice place to be because they want to save all the weight. Not this. This is such a nice place to be in. And having this in the Lexus lineup is a statement more than it is a car to sell. And the best part about it is looking at used car prices for these since 2018, they're actually depreciate as much as we'd hope so we can afford to buy one. There's no other way to say it. Folks, this is one of the most beautiful cars to ever come out of Lexus. To me, between this and the LFA was kind of an experiment and another one of those experiments, I'd actually take this, believe it or not, because this is a car you can actually drive every day. It's reliable. It's a UR series engine. You could drive it every day and enjoy it. It's not going to break down, not going to break the bank. It's very comfortable. It's very refined. It's not completely bespoke and whatnot. And that's the nice thing about it. That's why I would take this over an LFA, believe it or not, because the LFA is just too much to be driven by average Joe like me. I would drive this if I could afford one, but the problem is the prices don't come down, which is good for the owners that own them. Folks, I hope this video is helpful and informative. I hope you learned something new. If you like it, consider giving it a thumbs up. If you're not a subscriber, consider subscribing to the channel. Check out some other videos. Until the next video, folks, may the Lord bless you and keep you, and you have yourself a wonderful day.